1 year now since the release of Star Wars The Force Unleashed. I picked that up last year brand new for only 20 bucks at the local game store, and I had a blast playing through it. Released last week for the Xbox 360, PlayStation 3, and PC, LucasArts has given us a sequel that's received a lot of mixed opinions from a lot of the reviewers, it seems. While nothing new has been brought to the title, I did find it extremely entertaining, so let's check it out. Here's Star Wars The Force Unleashed 2. At the end of the Force Unleashed canon ending, we saw Starkiller get killed by the Emperor. Our story picks up after this ending, and not the ending where you become the Emperor's new bitch and play through the DLC. Note that if you haven't played through the first title, I'd recommend doing so you'll understand what the hell's going on, because the story in this title is a little confusing. Vader's begun cloning Starkillers to replace his defeated apprentice, but can't seem to get the process right, so that the clones may retain the powers of the dark side and be obedient to their master. Like the original Starkiller, they seem to struggle between the Force and the dark side as they receive visions from Starkiller's past, specifically dealing with his old love interest Juno. Jedi Knight General Ram Koda has recently been captured by the Empire and has been scheduled for death. Vader sends you, his latest clone, to kill Koda, but Koda sends you messages telepathically telling you that Vader is deceiving you and he doesn't have to be your master. Vader figures this out and attempts to kill you, but being the badass that you are able to escape and search out Koda yourself for clues on how to find Juno and how to determine who the hell you really are. Obviously, things get hectic over time and don't go exactly according to plan, and in the end, like the prequel, you'll be faced with a decision that will lead you down the dark side or the light side of the Force, giving you two very different endings, easily paving the way for separate DLCs or sequels. While the story is pretty complex, you'll get a much better understanding of everything if you complete both endings. Oh, and the final battle in the game is totally badass. The Force Unleashed 2 is spread out over 9 levels and took me about 8 hours to complete on the medium difficulty, so I felt the length of the game was about right. What I have a problem with is the fact that the 9 levels are spread out over only 4 different zones, one of which only lasts maybe 2 or 3 minutes, so you don't get a good variety of environments to play through, which makes the game seem much shorter than it really is. Like the original title, the game is entirely single player, but there are several challenge modes that get unlocked as you play. These challenge modes I found to be rather interesting as they really test your patience and gaming skills. Being that Starfighter learned all of his force powers and combos in the first game, it wouldn't really make sense for him to relearn them all in the sequel, so instead of selecting from a vast array of upgrades, you're presented with a generic list that simply upgrades the potency of your force powers. You know all of the combos from the previous game from the start, but you're never taught how to properly execute them until you visit the challenge modes. I would have probably preferred to know this beforehand so I could be a more efficient Deathbringer, but now I've got a reason to go back and play through it again. The real entertainment value of Star Wars games, where you get to use the Force, comes from how much of a badass it really makes you feel. By the end of the first Force Unleashed, Starkiller was pretty skilled in the arts of the dark side, having the ability to execute amazing combos with a lightsaber, as well as the force powers of push, grip, dash, repulse, and of course lightning. Most of these powers are accessible to you right from the beginning, and the remainders are cleverly unlocked for you automatically, periodically over time, as you'll have visions of your past where you remember using a particular power to solve a situation. You'll also gain 2 new spells, including Mind Trick, which allows you to confuse your enemies into attacking each other, which is essential in some of the later levels, and Force Fury, where Starkiller basically freaks the shit out and starts doing uber powerful moves and destroying everything in sight while taking 0 damage. Force Fury has its own meter in the bottom left corner of the screen that fills up over time from killing enemies, and is drained upon casting it. The combat starts to get a little repetitive over time, but that becomes a non-factor because the variety of the enemies included in this title actually require specific tactics to defeat, so you're constantly faced with switching your strategy to ensure you don't get the crap beaten out of you. Some enemies can only be hurt by lightsaber, and some may only be affected by certain force abilities. Plus, it seems like you have to play a lot more aggressively this time around if you want to stay alive. The quick time events are back in full force as to be expected, but I found them to be a lot easier. That is, there seemed to be a lot more room for error, which I found to be a rather annoying problem with its predecessor. Starkiller now also has access to dual lightsabers, which is freaking amazing. Scattered throughout the levels are various colored holocrons, which give you a larger health or force power bar, provide currency to be spent purchasing upgraded abilities, as well as unlock various lightsabers to utilize. Each of the different lightsabers have different buffs, like faster health regeneration or the ability to catch foes on fire, and you can mix and match which ones you want in each hand. Finally, throughout the game you'll unlock some seriously badass costumes that you could change into, including the Sith Stalker armor, Boba Fett, and even a freaking Guybrush Threepwood costume. Hell yeah!
Rogue Shadow, please transmit landing codes.
This is General Ram Kota requesting permission to board the Salvation.
One thing that should be very clear by now is that the graphics have seen a significant upgrade in quality. The lighting and special effects, and the level of detail to both the environments and character models is outstanding. But there were some minor frame rate issues at times, and some minor screen tearing here and there, but not enough that I'd be concerned about it. In addition, the pre-rendered cutscenes and even the game engine rendered cutscenes are some of the best I've seen yet in a video game. I'd say they probably rival those of Final Fantasy XIII. The wonderful voice actors from the original have all returned and are top-notch, and you can't ever go wrong with an amazing Star Wars soundtrack. Overall, the presentation was sensational. I absolutely loved it.
If you could provide the Alliance with information on the cloning facilities there, we could launch a full-scale...
No! I just want... Look, I need a place to think this through. To meditate.
In this day and age where money's hard to come by and the overwhelming plethora of remarkably wonderful games continue to be released, it can be pretty difficult deciding how to spend that hard-earned dollar. Star Wars The Force Unleashed 2 offers amazing graphics, extremely fun gameplay, a decent yet confusing story, but overall a great experience. To me though, it just doesn't have the level of depth of its predecessor. Had the designers taken the story to some more varied environments, I think the game's length would have seemed much more on par for what we expect. Regardless, I still thought this was a pretty badass freaking game, but $60 for an 8-hour single-player game without multiplayer is a bit steep. I'd probably wait for the price to drop a bit to balance the gameplay per dollar ratio. I picked up the first game for $20 and I feel I'd be happy paying the same price for this one. If you haven't yet played The Force Unleashed, I'd go pick that up and wait for this one to come down a bit in price, but I would definitely recommend picking this up at some point because it's pretty damned fun. What are your thoughts? Leave your questions and comments below. Check out the full write-up and screenshots over at ZeitgeistGameReview.com. Stay up to date by following me on Twitter and Facebook, and make sure to check out all of the other great gaming entertainment on the Game Station. Don't forget to subscribe and press the thumbs up button. Thanks for watching.